A time journey. On the high desert side of the Cascade Mountain Range in Oregon, you can visit the remains of an enormous Ice Age lake. At the lake's edge is a cave. 10,000 years ago, as the ice was melting, up to 20 people at a time lived together in this 800 square foot space. They made tools out of obsidian, cooked fish, and hunted animals in the surrounding area. When the tallest Cascade peak, Mount Mazama, erupted, the cave dwellers left in a hurry, leaving behind their sagebrush sandals. The sandals were undisturbed for eons until the 1970s, when archaeologists found them under a thick blanket of ash and volcanic glass. After these first people fled from the volcano, their relatives lived in the cave over a time span of thousands of years. They carried the story of how the universe, the landscape, and animals around them were created. Eventually, the lake dried up and was replaced by a sea of rabbit brush and sage. The cave people moved away for lack of resources, and the cave became occupied by cattle and curious children from nearby ranches. Some descendants of the first inhabitants still live in the area. By telling their creation story, they keep it safe from being lost forever. Tourists can board a bus in the Fort Rock Recreational Area parking lot and travel to the cave and hear firsthand the sacred story of creation told by a local tribal member. According to tradition, descendants of those first people are the only ones who can pass the story on. When you are from the western side of the Cascade Mountains, your world is moist and green. There are hills and mountains and trees in the way of big spaces. In the Oregon desert, on the eastern side, the green is pale and only knee-high. You can see over the tops of the brush and notice stripes of different colored sky far in the distance. From one direction, sunlight moves along a large geological shape, and in another far-off direction, massive gray clouds drop and roll, bringing hail and wind. Layers of lines of sediment of every natural tone end on soft curving edges of surrounding earth rises and pick up farther off in the evaporated lake beds. Weather comes fast, from miles out, arrives and goes again in no time. Sometimes the sky is blue or black and full of stars. It is always big and quiet, but there are differences every time you visit. When you are out in this wide open space, a feeling larger than yourself comes along. You gather up rocks that catch your eye with their color and shape. You wonder about these rocks. You take in the exquisite depth and detail of these time travelers, knowing it is likely they have never been touched by another human since they were flung from the top of an erupting volcano and tumbled through time to end up in your hand. You are a girl who has been given the sacred story of creation at the cave. You can sense the agelessness of this place and yourself at the same time. As much as you'd like to, something will not let you take the rocks home. So you arrange them in a circle on the ground. You squint at the sky, take a mouthful of water, and spit half of it back on the ground to acknowledge what feels like a sacred moment. Maybe when another person comes upon your circle, it will make them wonder. Wondering will make them stop for a second. Jackrabbits and coyotes, rattlesnakes and horned toads will pass through the circle and good medicine will happen. Or you may be the person who will never make a stone circle on the desert floor. You may be a descendant of the ranchers who brought your guns to kill the jackrabbits and hang one from a hook off the front bumper of your big rig. This, you say, helps fellow ranchers whose cattle compete for food with the rabbits. You are the boy who comes across a circle of rocks and just for a second wonders about it, then kicks it while making jokes with your friends. There is a rattlesnake under the sage, and one of your friends picks it up. He starts to tease you with it, tickling the back of your neck with its rattles. On the third time you tell him, if he does not stop, you will kill him. He stops, then pretty soon says, uh-oh, and has been bitten by the snake on a finger. When you are the bitten boy, your friends put a tourniquet around the wound and get you quickly to the truck. There, they plunge your hand into a cooler of ice and beer cans. This is not a good idea, but no one knows. You are praying for your life and want your mother. When you are finally being airlifted to the nearest hospital, if you are this lucky rattlesnake-bitten boy, you pass out and have a dream. In the dream, you are everyone. You are the inhabitants of the cave, the stone circle girl, and the boy with guns. You are the stones and the sage and the rattlesnake. You are the jackrabbit who has been shot, skewered by a hook through the gut, and hung from a bumper. When you crouch down to look at the rabbit, she opens her eyes and looks at you. You see she is sad, not for herself, but for you. You startle awake because for the first time in your life you see the rabbit. You notice you are extremely lucky to be alive with no hook through your belly. The next morning, as the girl, you see the jackrabbit hanging from the front bumper of a pickup truck in the campground you're staying at. At first you look away because it makes a knot in your belly, but because you want to be brave and respectful of the rabbit's life, you crouch down to look at the rabbit who does not open her eyes. The friend of the snake-bitten boy, the one he teased with the rattles, the one who kicked the rocks, comes over with a beer in his hand and asks you if you want to pet the rabbit. You look into this boy's lake blue eyes as he vividly passes on the story of the rattlesnake bite. There is a strong sense of sage in the wind. You have imagined how the cave people collected and shredded the sage bark to make the sandals. The landscape is boundless and illuminated all around. You have 2 stories and 1 stone in your pocket.